Hey guys, it's Ollie with the Reptile Den. Today we're thrilled to have Jack Chavez, the force behind the Paranormal Chicago Convention. Jack leads ghost tours, public ghost investigations, and has been featured in numerous documentaries. He explores the realm of cryptids, ghosts, UFOs, and other unexplained phenomena. Let's dive into the interview. All right. Now I'm sitting with Jack Chavez. Thank you for coming on. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you you having me. I'm a big fan of reptiles myself, and zoology in general.
Yes.
So I owned 2 iguanas in the past.
Oh my goodness.
So it's awesome to be here.
That's great. That's great. So I learned about you because you have a very popular Facebook group called Paranormal Chicago. That's very active, probably the most active group about like paranormal and cryptozoology and all that kind of stuff. And then you also run this, what would you call, what's the name of the convention that you guys do?
Yeah, so it's the Paranormal Chicago Convention. And I've had it at a couple different locations. Right now it's in Countryside, Illinois, so it's just outside Chicago. A lot of people ask me, why don't you have the convention in Chicago proper? Well, there's a couple of different reasons, and the main reason is because it's so hard to find a facility that'll house this kind of thing. You know, Chicago with all its mandatory things that you have to get for it,
Right.
And it's just a little too complex. But this is right outside Chicago, so yeah, there's the Paranormal Chicago Convention.
That is so cool. Yeah, and I guess people don't really know. I can't even imagine all the legwork you have to do behind the scenes, just aside from rules and that kind of thing, to put on the convention. People just kind of see the finished product,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So
There's so much work involved. I mean, and I'm doing it by myself.
wow.
And I have 80 vendors.
Oh my goodness. That's huge.
I usually have 5 to 6 speakers.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's a lot to do. But you know what? It's work that I like. It could get stressful, but it's a stress that I could handle. You know what I'm saying?
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow, 80 vendors, and what all do these vendors have when they set up at Paranormal Chicago?
Man, we have everything from tarot readers to psychics to palm readers. Oh, I have a tea leaf reader.
Oh, that's
She
cool.
Yeah, she reads tea leaves. I have paranormal investigators. I have writers in the paranormal. I have everything. Oh,
That is so cool.
paranormal artists, you know.
Wow.
And hopefully next year I'll have you. You know?
There you go,
There
right?
you go.
Add some reptiles to the
Right,
mix. I mean,
yes.
it really goes hand in hand, though, right?
It does, because I do have a terranium guy as
Okay,
a vendor.
that's beautiful.
So there you go. Yeah.
That is so cool. So you were very kind of prestiged in this community. You've been featured on some documentaries. What is that like?
It's a lot of fun, to be honest. One of the documentaries is on Amazon. It's called On the Trail of the Lake Michigan Mothman. And I'm only in a tiny segment. But I was interviewed on the alleged Mothman sightings in Chicago. If your audience is not familiar with Mothman was this entity, this strange being that was sighted in Point Pleasant, West Virginia from 1966 to 1967. And one of the first documented sightings was a couple of grave diggers. They're doing their job, and they look up and they see what they described as a humanoid man with wings. And from there it takes off.
Oh my
Linda and Roger Scarberry were these 2 teenagers. They were a couple, and they were driving along what they call in Point Pleasant the TNT. What do you call it? The TNT area.
Maybe like a quarry or something like that.
What it was it was an abandoned World War II ammunition site.
Okay,
And it was a lover's lane in the 60s.
I gotcha.
So they were going out there, and they had 2 other friends in the back of the car. And when they're driving over there, this creature appeared in the distance. Linda Scarberry noticed it. It had 2 large red eyes. And it was described anywhere from, Mothman is usually described anywhere from 6 to 8 feet tall. Not much of a head, but like a face resting on its chest.
Okay.
And it scared the life out of them. They actually went to the police.
Wow.
And they said that they sped away, and the creature was able to keep up with them. And they went to the police. They reported it, and like I said, it took off from there. And the Mothman Prophecies, the book, was written by John Keel, and he was a paranormal investigator, and he documented all these sightings with Mothman. And it wasn't just Mothman that was being sighted at this time. There was also other things involved. There was whole blocks were reporting poltergeist activity.
Wow.
In conjunction with UFO sightings everywhere. So it's like Point Pleasant during that time. There was like it was a window area. A window area in the paranormal is where you have various phenomena, various different paranormal phenomena taking place all in one location. And so that seems like what was happening in Point Pleasant.
Wow. What could be the cause of that?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness.
Some say that it was like magicians, like occultists, that opened a door to the other side. Some say, some even say that Mothman was a harbinger of doom, because the last sightings.
I've heard of that.
Right. Yeah. The last sightings were the collapse of the Silver Bridge.
Yes.
Where I believe 46 people died.
Wow.
Right before Christmas.
And there's like a picture, right, where he's like maybe in the corner right before tragedies happen.
It's not, that picture though. It's not an authentic picture.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, after that, no more Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant. Now they say that Mothman started to appear in Chicago in 2017, and one of the first sightings was in the Pilsen neighborhood in south side of Chicago. Well, I just happened to be living in Pilsen during that time. And the sightings, there was, by the end of 2017, there was like over 60 sightings.
Oh my goodness.
And now there's easily over 100 sightings.
Wow.
But I'm going to be honest with everybody. I'm very skeptical about the Chicago Mothman sightings.
Okay.
In the Point Pleasant, West Virginia Mothman episode, there was a lot of similarities with the description of Mothman. Like I said, anywhere from 6 to 8 feet tall, no head, 2 large eyes, a wingspan that was about 7 feet. Well, with the Chicago one, there was no continuity.
Okay.
It was all different. Also, this is more like kind of behind the scenes stuff, but I do have reason to believe that it was hoaxed by actually one individual. And
really?
Yeah. And I'm not going to say the name.
Sure.
But yeah, I do have reason to believe that it was one individual that was perpetrating a lot of this.
So what all goes into authenticating a report of any sort of cryptid? Like, say somebody calls you up or you hear, how what is the process to authenticate such a report?
Sure. So it's hard, man. It's so hard because, we're dealing with a phenomena that doesn't obey the laws of physics.
Right.
And then you're also dealing with people that you don't know if they're reliable. You don't know if they're trustworthy. For me, specifically with these Chicago alleged Mothman sightings, it was it started out with a lot of the reports that were coming in. You read the reports, and it was similar language.
Okay.
In a lot of them.
Right, and you found the continuity in it.
Right. There was phrases. There was references to other things, and over the span of all these reports, there was so much similarity. And it's like, not everybody talks like this,
Sure. And
then, of course, there was more things than that, but that's kind of more the behind the scenes stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, this isn't legitimate, unfortunately, But that's okay, because there's a lot of other legitimacy in the paranormal.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I am not. I'm very open actually to a lot of these sightings in the paranormal. I'm open to the absurdity of it. I'm open to the ridiculousness of it, because a lot of times when you get into more and more ridiculousness, it there's an authenticity to it, to be honest with you.
Sure. I mean,
You
I
know?
always hear like the saying like stranger things have happened, right? And that kind of thing. Like we live in a world so vast and so many questions that are unanswered. I mean, who knows, right?
Exactly.
And I know growing up, I was so attracted to kind of the allure of paranormal as well as kind of cryptozoology through like Monster Quest,
Yeah.
watching that,
Yeah.
like the ghost investigators and that kind of thing. How all did you get into it?
It happened really organically, actually. I wish I could say that, like a lot of other paranormal researchers and investigators, that they had a sighting when they were young, and that's what kind of lured them into this field. Unfortunately, I didn't have that privilege. It kind of became a fascination early on, just with unexplained mysteries.
Yes.
I really got into missing persons cases when I was a kid.
Okay.
And that led to cults, which led to
Sure.
UFOs, which led to ghosts, and so on and so on.
Just
And then,
fed
you
into
know,
each other. Well, yeah,
yeah.
you think of like the Heaven's Gate, right? And they're like a UFO believer cult, and
Yeah, exactly.
there's rabbit hole. There's so many, especially
Oh,
with
there-
YouTube now and the documentaries.
Yeah.
Some of those videos on there are so well made. It's like almost like TV productions, and
A lot of those videos on YouTube are way better than what these other mainstream streaming services offer.
sure, right?
You know, so they really are. You know, but yeah, like I said, the absurdity of it is there's a lot of authenticity to it. You know, for example, you take these Bigfoot sightings in the Chicagoland area.
Okay.
A lot of people think like, well, Bigfoot near Chicago. Like, no, Bigfoot is like in the deep woods in Alabama. It's like, no, actually, there are a lot of Bigfoot encounters in the Chicagoland area.
And you were so right. There's a website that I was going down a whole rabbit hole on where people from all over the country
Mhm.
file in by state their reports. And Illinois had one of the most reports for Bigfoot kind of compared to other states. I was surprised to see. And not just, maybe you think, okay, maybe the Shawnee Forest, right? So big. But I am seeing them like in Chicagoland area reports and the suburbs too.
Yeah. Not too far is Bachelor's Grove.
Yes.
Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. That's in Midlothian, Illinois. And it's really the outskirts of the city. It's like right there. There was actually two ghost investigators they were doing some ghost investigating in
Sure.
Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and things were being thrown at them, and they're looking around and they don't see anything, and then they're like, then they started hearing weird noises, and then they started to come to the conclusion gradually that like, hey, this isn't ghostly activity, like there's something else going on. So they called Stan Courtney. Stan Courtney is he's a very popular Bigfoot researcher
Okay.
and investigator. And Stan Courtney came in to Bachelor's Grove, and they kind of did a little investigation with him there. And yeah, they all came to the conclusion like,
Oh my
this
goodness.
is Bigfoot territory over here. You know, one of the things that they were seeing were these triangle structures in the woods, and what that means is like these tree trunks that were kind of like ripped out, and these large branches to form triangles
Wow.
in the woods. And there are a lot of Bigfoot researchers that believe that this is Bigfoot either creating a shelter or even creating a portal for them to travel. Because there's a lot of Bigfoot researchers. Now, I will say they are on the fringe of Bigfoot research,
Okay.
but they believe that Bigfoot is a or not just a flesh and blood creature, but also an interdimensional being.
Wow, I never have heard of that.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of leaning towards that direction myself from
Wow.
a lot of the research that I've done. We've never gotten a body of Bigfoot.
Right, that's
Um,
true.
If you follow a lot of the Bigfoot tracks, they will disappear as if like Bigfoot just evaporated.
I see what you
Yeah.
mean.
And also there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings where an individual will see Bigfoot and then the legs would disappear, the torso would disappear, the arms would disappear, and what's left are the eyes, and then the eyes finally disappear. There are quite a few people, if you really delve into Bigfoot reports, that say the same thing.
That is so interesting. And is that kind of like a new kind of concept of Bigfoot, or?
It's not new. It's just not well regarded.
Okay.
There's a lot of Bigfoot researchers. I believe, if I'm correct, I believe Stan Courtney himself doesn't actually believe that. Okay. But you have individual other researchers like Ron Moorhead, who wrote the book Quantum Bigfoot. He believes in that kind of thing. And like I said, I'm kind of leaning towards it as well. If you look at ancient cultures and their view of Bigfoot, like Native Americans, they believe that Bigfoot was a guardian of the forest. Okay. The spirit brothers, that they would call them, and they believe that they, were able to disappear at will, manifest.
Wow.
They had that great power, things like that.
My next question was going to be, what would be the motive of, Bigfoot to be kind of teleporting around, but you kind of answer that where you say they're kind of regarded as a protector of the forest, right?
That could be it. They could be protectors of the forest, or maybe they need to come into our dimension for food, because there's a lot of encounters with Bigfoot where they're carrying off a deer, or they just killed a deer. It could be something like that.
Holy cow.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
that's great. You're kind of blowing my mind right now with that kind of stuff. I mean, because this stuff, has always been kind of like a lifelong fascination with me, just all things. And I feel like we're kind of fortunate to be in Illinois, because Illinois is sort of like a hot spot when it comes to, I think, cryptids and just oddities in general, because I've kind of read loosely about the Murfreesboro mud monster, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's so many of them in throughout Illinois. I just did a presentation a couple months ago in Starved Rock, and which is like kind of more a little bit northern Illinois. Mm-hmm. And part of the presentation, I looked up a lot of Bigfoot sightings in that area, and there's so many.
Wow.
There's a lot, and you go even not too far from here in Maywood, Illinois. There was newspaper reports. Now, this is going back decades, but there was a newspaper report where a large group of people saw a hairy creature that kind of just stepped back into the forest right near them.
No kidding.
So, yeah.
When I was reading on that website where people submit reports, I read like even in the zoo woods in Brookfield of sightings and stuff.
Right. So there was a motorcyclist, and it was early in the morning, and he was driving down the road, and he said that he caught a glimpse of this large creature. It was about 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall or so, and it was very hairy. And he didn't really see the front of it, but he saw how tall it was, how hairy it was, and it stepped back into the brush and just disappeared.
That is the reporting that was in Brookfield?
Yes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that was in Brookfield. That was right by the zoo, actually.
So do you hear a lot of these reports kind of secondhand, or do people kind of find you and they kind of confide in you? Like, are people publicly, saying, or are they kind of worried that they may be kind of shunned or something? You know what I mean? It'd be misunderstood, right?
You know what? It's both, actually. I do look for people myself. Mm-hmm. I reach out to people, whether it's online forums or I just like kind of strike conversation with strangers. I do that a lot. Or people do reach out to me, actually. Not so much for Bigfoot. I think they more reach out to me for like ghost related stuff and UFO sightings, things of that nature.
Well, I know that you do ghost investigations. I want to kind of pick your brain about that. What all goes into that? Like, do you have to go at night to find the ghosts, or how do you get permission to go to these places? What all goes into that sort of thing?
Yeah, so that's a whole other project too, because I do ghost tours in Chicago and I do public ghost investigations. What I do is I rent out known haunted locations. Then I open it to the public, and I give a presentation on the history and the hauntings of the location.
Wow.
And then I give people ghost equipments so they can investigate the premises on their own.
Really?
Yeah.
What equipment does one use? I'm thinking of maybe Paranormal Activity or the Taking a Deborah Logan, where they set up the house with the cameras and that kind of thing. What is ghost equipment?
Yeah, there's cameras involved. Well,
Right.
one of the more famous ones is called the EMF meter.
Okay.
What it is, it's a electromagnetic field meter,
Okay.
and it detects disturbances in the electromagnetic field. So you turn it on, and when you turn it on, it's at green.
Okay.
And then it could go higher up to yellow, orange, red, and the more disturbances that are taking place, the higher up it goes. The lights.
Really? So
yeah.
it just kind of clicks up and gets.
Yeah.
I've seen maybe TikTokers and other online people. They use some sort of, I don't know if it's a black box or some sort of device where they could get radio frequency feedback and hear voices and that kind of thing.
Sure, the ghost box.
Oh,
yeah.
it's called a ghost box?
Yeah, it's called a ghost box.
So is that something that you guys work with too?
I
for
do.
The investigation?
So what that is, it's like a regular radio, but it has a setting where you could go through the radio stations repeatedly, rapidly.
Okay.
So it makes a noise like just like you're scanning through the radio.
Okay.
And you could have it on FM or AM. And the idea behind this is that ghosts are probably composed of, some sort of electromagnetic field,
Okay.
and that they'll be able to latch on to the frequencies of the radio station, and they'll be able to talk through that.
I see.
Yeah. So now I'm always honest with people that I investigate with, that I do tend to be a little bit skeptical of these devices.
Okay.
However, I've gotten some good results with them too. So
really?
yeah, for example, I was actually doing a ghost tour in south side of Chicago, and there was it was with a group of people, and I said, okay, let's try the ghost box, and I turn it on, and it's going, and you can hear little things like little
Okay.
voices,
Okay.
but it's just like the radio. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's just the radio. Like you'll hear the voice like, hi, or, it like a commercial,
Okay.
or like a song lyric, because obviously it's going through the radio.
Sure.
Well, there was this girl in the group, and she goes, if you're real, say banana. And then in my head, I'm like, okay, that's not how it works. And then the ghost box goes, banana.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, what? And then the girls started screaming.
Wow.
And I was just amazed. I was like, that was incredible.
So
that was awesome.
The ghost box, that's been used by paranormal investigators for many, many decades, right?
Sure, yeah,
The-
exactly.
So it's is there any kind of other old kind of technology that people have been using since the start of kind of paranormal investigations?
You know what? In previous decades, it's just now that we're using all this high technology.
Right.
In previous decades, it was really a recorder, a video camera,
Sure.
and a voice recorder.
I gotcha. So it's very
And-
primitive.
Yeah, very primitive, and that's kind of what I work with, actually.
Okay.
I use the ghost box, I use the EMF meter, but my go-to is really the voice recorder, because you could get so much from a voice recorder. And I actually have an old school one where it's actually a cassette player.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
So-
very legitimate.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So when you're taping and stuff and trying to get results, most of the time are you hearing it in real time? Do you hear a whisper in real time, or is it when you're done with your investigation, you're looking back at the tapes and it's maybe something you didn't necessarily catch initially, or
Most of the time, you don't hear it until afterwards.
okay,
But there are those times where you hear it in real time.
right,
We were investigating a church in Cicero, Illinois. It's actually a psychic church.
really?
It's owned by a medium, and she does seances out of it.
Oh wow,
Yeah, And so we were investigating there, and it was 4 of us. We were in a basement, and we actually just started socializing. We weren't even talking about the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear a 4-note whistle. I can't whistle, so I can't mimic it. But
I don't know if the microphones would pick it up. Anyway.
But it was a 4-note whistle.
Yeah.
And I was like, we all just stopped.
Everybody heard it.
And what's really interesting, okay, I said there was 4 of us, right?
Yeah.
Only 3 of us heard it. But it was very audible.
Okay.
So what ended up happening is we all stop. And we were like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And then I go out into the hall that was in the basement, and I go, hello, hello, and there was nobody there. And so luckily, one of the girls was recording.
Mm-hmm.
So she played it back, and you can hear something, but it's like in the distance.
Okay.
It's like barely audible, whereas when it happened in real time, like it was very audible, you know?
Have you ever been scared out of a place? Because that honestly would probably do it for me if I was, you know. Have you ever been scared out of a place? Have you ever had to like stop?
You're a big guy. You're not going to leave. Come on.
I don't know.
No, I haven't been scared out of a place.
And
no.
Are you normally? Maybe I'm just thinking of like all of like the cliches, but it's not like the doors are like locked and you gotta wait till sunrise to be let out. Like, do you stay overnight in a lot of these places?
You know, I tend. There's been times where there's been overnight, but I tend not to stay overnight.
Okay.
I just do like a couple hours,
Mm-hmm.
and then we just kind of pack up and go after that, you know. And that seems to work because even within a span of like 4 or 5 hours, you can get a good amount of activity. But I also like go back to places that I've been to before because, you know, I always think that's a good idea to see, you know, something happened last time. Is there a way that we could debunk it this time? Or could we catch new evidence? Or, you know, things like that. So
has there ever been like, what would be like I'm trying to think how I would want to word this. Has there ever been like a spot that is like the most famous in Chicagoland for hauntings? I hear a lot about, I don't mean to cut you off, I hear a lot about Bachelor's Grove.
Sure, yeah.
And I hear a lot of the mystique and paranormal that goes on with that. But is there kind of like, this is like the most haunted place in Chicagoland?
Right. Well, you mentioned Bachelor's Grove. Bachelor's Grove is a great place to investigate. Unfortunately, you can't be there after dusk. Right. But even during daytime, I mean, a lot of things have happened in Bachelor's Grove. From balls of light, orbs, green orbs, blue orbs, red orbs floating around. You get phantom cars, phantom black cars, a phantom black dog. And the most famous ghostly phenomena in Bachelor's Grove is the disappearing house.
Really?
Yes. There is a house that appears in the distance, an old farmhouse. And it's never seen in the same location, but people will describe it the same way, where it has a porch and everything.
No kidding.
Now, it was only like a couple decades ago where we found out that there were actual houses in that area. There was property there.
Oh, no kidding. I mean, I guess that makes sense because it is such a small, tucked away.
Right.
Now it's all forested. And
exactly.
if I'm not mistaken, when Mitzi and I had gone, we almost had to like walk like a quarter mile or half a mile or something like that through forested area.
Right.
I think. So what is the ghost dog? I've heard there's like mob kind of ties and stuff. Or
you know, with the mob, there were legends that the pond that's in Bachelor's Grove, the mob would dump bodies in there. But we're skeptical of that one because apparently that pond is only about 5 feet deep.
Okay.
So if you're going to throw a body in there, it's not going to sink. It's just going to float. Right. So that was probably one of the urban legends that was created.
I remember there was a lot of people like, do people still vandalize the cemetery today? I mean, that's terrible.
You know, not so much anymore, but yeah, throughout the decades, it was heavily vandalized.
Right. I heard that some stones were stolen and returned.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of the tombstones were stolen. Things were spray painted. You know, it was a place to go hang out and drink and just kind of be dumb. You know what I'm saying? But also, you did have a lot of satanic cults
Really?
in the 80s and the 90s, well, even back into the 70s, that were conducting rituals there. If you're familiar with the Satanic Panic era
Yes.
of the 80s,
Right.
of the 80s and early 90s, the Satanic Panic era was, this idea that people everywhere throughout the country were seeing Satanism, here and there, and in music, in pop culture, with your local neighbor, your local, school, things like that. Well, it's always scoffed at, but to be honest, there's legitimacy in the Satanic Panic because there were a lot of cults and they were doing a lot of sacrifices. And there were a lot of people that were run out of forests because there were people in black robes that chased them out. And I've actually interviewed quite a few people that this happened to.
In Illinois, especially?
Yes, in Illinois.
No
well,
kidding.
throughout the country.
Right.
But I've interviewed people in the Illinois
Right.
area,
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, like people that are older now, like I've definitely talked to people that are like, yeah, I went in there with a couple friends and we heard chanting. We kind of followed the chanting, and we came upon people that they made a circle, and there was like an animal in the middle.
Oh my
And then they
gosh.
started yelling at us and then chasing us. So there is definitely legitimacy to it.
Are there any kind of like, or hopefully I don't get like assassinated, but is there any like organized cults operating in Illinois today?
Oh man, you're asking a big question.
That might be
There's-
kind of weird territory.
There is a lot of research I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
I think that there is a cult operating out of Chicago that I can't really get into right now.
Okay.
My research is still ongoing, and there's a couple other reasons why I don't think I could get into too much detail.
I mean, that's fair, right?
I
You don't want to be
could
barking
tell-
up the wrong tree.
Exactly, yeah. I will tell one story about the kind of research that I'm doing right now. Is I know an individual that's, fairly known, fairly well known, kind of in the public eye.
Okay.
And he told me that he was in the woods in Chicago, in the north side of Chicago, and he was asked to hang out with these two people, these two girls. And this guy, he goes, man, a chance to hang out with these two hot girls. I'm like, of course I want to take this,
Right.
But he thought it was weird because it was like really random, and he's like, okay, I'll do it, And they said, well, let's go hang out, in the forest. And so they kind of, took him into the forest, and they told him like, oh, we have some friends that are in there right now, and we'll introduce you and stuff. And he's like, okay. So they go in there and they go pretty deep into the forest, and they come upon this clearing, and there's these all these women there, and they're dancing and stuff, and like they're kind of like, like scantily clad.
Okay.
And then he's like, man, what's going on? So he starts getting kind of scared, and he texts his friends like, hey man, if something happens to me, this is where I'm at, just in case.
Wow.
And one of the women there goes, what are you doing? And he goes, oh, nothing. I'm just, my friends are just asking me like, what am I doing? I'm just letting them where I'm at and stuff. And she's like, oh, no, you can't do that. And so she demands that the two girls that brought him to take him out. To usher him out of the woods. So they do, and he's like, it's really awkward because like no, they're not saying anything to him as they're escorting him out. And they come upon this like small bridge, and then one of the girls looks over and she goes, you're really lucky you told your friends where you are, because by the end of the night, this is where you were going to end up.
What?
And he says that he didn't respond to it.
Wow.
He didn't say anything. He just like, okay. And eventually like they got to like familiar ground, and he just, he left.
Just went his own way.
Yeah. So I think there's that, and there might be another cult that's pretty big.
So not only is it a cult that is operating, but you're saying it could possibly be a murderous cult.
Yeah, a murderous cult.
Wow.
I think, it seems that way,
That is really scary.
But besides those dangerous cults, there are a lot of, non-dangerous pagan rituals that take place in the woods. Because even to this day, you could find decapitated heads in woods like Schiller Woods, in the north side of Chicago, and LaBar Woods in the north side of Chicago. One of my friends has a famous TikTok. AJ True Crime is his TikTok.
Okay, I think I've seen him on social media.
Yeah, he's pretty well known, this guy.
Okay.
By the way, this is not the guy that I was telling about the cult story.
Yeah,
it's
no,
totally different
so.
people. But he was telling me that he was just in the woods not that long ago, and he found a decapitated deer.
Oh my goodness!
Just the head was there.
Really?
And there was she was this pagan woman, and she was actually interviewed for a local paper, and she said that we do perform animal sacrifices, but it's not out of malevolence, it's not out of evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to appease the deities. So you get stuff like that, but I also think that you do get dangerous people that are conducting these things as well. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing to think that, the, underbellies of, society that could, possibly exist. I mean...
Once I do more research and I have, more things down, I would love to come back and talk to you more about what I found, because it's actually really fascinating.
No kidding.
Earlier you asked me, what about one of the most haunted places within just Chicago? I would actually say the Congress Hotel.
Congress Hotel? What is that place?
The Congress Hotel is on Michigan Avenue in downtown Chicago. It's right by Millennium Park.
Okay.
Across the street from Millennium Park. And the Congress Hotel was built in 1893 in preparation for the Chicago World's Fair, the Chicago Columbian Exposition. Yeah.
That's not H.H. Holmes, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he was operating...
Well, the legend goes that H.H. Holmes, the serial killer H.H. Holmes, was picking up young girls from the Congress Hotel for his alleged murder castle in the south side of Chicago, which is in the Englewood neighborhood today.
Is it a post office now?
It's now a post office.
That's what I thought, right?
Yeah. But, I'm going to have to burst some people's bubble. H.H. Holmes, it seems like, wasn't actually a serial killer. We're pretty sure that he killed. Well, no, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. We do know he killed because he went to prison for killing his former business partner.
Yes.
And it is believed, although he didn't get convicted of this, it is believed that he killed 2 other women. Okay. And he put their bodies in a barrel where the murder castle would have been.
Right.
But that murder castle in the Englewood neighborhood didn't actually get finished. So it never became a hotel as was planned. So all the stories about, people renting out rooms and then he gassed people in the rooms and only to watch them, that actually never took place because the hotel was never fully built.
I gotcha.
He was, even though he did kill, he was more of a swindler than he was a killer.
He was scamming insurances and stuff.
He was doing
a
lot of scamming, and that's originally why they were going after him. And then he killed. So that's how that happened. There's a great researcher. His name is Adam Selzer, and he wrote a whole book on H.H. Holmes. It's considered the most in-depth book ever on H.H. Holmes, and he goes into all this detail. He goes into newspaper archives, everything. But it's, did H.H. Holmes go to the Congress Hotel? It is possible, but we don't know that for sure. Whether he's there or not, there's still so many stories with the Congress Hotel. I've investigated there several times, and we've had several different things happen. one of the times is the EMF meters I was talking about, the electromagnetic field meters. I set them up in different locations, like very far away from each other, and they would go off at the same time.
Really?
Which they shouldn't be doing, you know?
Okay.
So we got that, and that's really interesting. We got a lot of stuff on during the ghost box. You know, you turn on the ghost box and you say things like, is anybody, you know, here with us? Does anybody want to communicate with us? And usually you get responses like, you know, yes or no.
Oh my goodness.
Or sometimes you don't get responses. But with the Congress Hotel, you get a lot of responses, even some direct responses, because we do know during World War II, there was a mother who emigrated from Europe. The country escapes me, but it was a country in Europe. She emigrates to Chicago, and she, with her 2 young sons, she was waiting for her husband to come back from the motherland, and he never did. And she had a mental breakdown, and so in her mental breakdown, she pushed her sons out of the window, and then she threw herself out the window.
Oh my goodness. So
we believe that one of the little boy spirits on the 12th floor, seeing running around or knocking on the doors, is actually one of these children that she pushed out of the window. And, you know, sometimes when you do the ghost box, you could get direct responses from this ghost. You know, like
from a child ghost.
Exactly. Like, how old are you? You know, you'll get a response like 8 years old, or, you know, how did you die? You'll get something like it says window or fall or things like that. So
that's terrifying.
The Congress Hotel is a great place to investigate pretty much all Chicago, to be honest with you.
Well, because some parts of Chicago are so historic, right?
Exactly.
That's just it.
Yeah, a lot of Chicago, you know, Chicago is rich with history, you know. So when you have a place that's rich with history, rich with violence, you know, you're going to get a lot of ghostly phenomena, a lot of psychic locations, bursts of psychic activity, you know, things like that, you know. And Chicago is not the only place, obviously, you know. You have places like New Orleans that's like that.
Right, I've heard of that, especially like the above ground crypts and that sort of thing.
You know, even places like Bishopville, South Carolina, where actually the lizard man was sighted.
Okay,
the lizard man.
That's right up my alley.
That's right up your alley.
What is that all about?
The year was 1988. Christopher Davis, he was a 17-year-old kid. He was leaving McDonald's. He was driving home from his job at McDonald's. It was 2 a.m. My question is, why was he driving home at 2 a.m. from McDonald's? Like, what is McDonald's doing to its employees that they have to stay that late?
A lot of them are open really late, though. Or 24.
Man.
I don't know if they're still quite 24 hours. A lot of them are, I think.
Oh, jeez.
That's brutal.
So he's driving home from work, and he gets a flat tire. So he pulls over to change the tire, and from the nearby swamp, it was called Scape Ore Swamp. And from that swamp, there's a creature comes out. And he describes it as like this reptilian-like creature. It was a bipedal creature, so it stood on 2 legs.
Feet.
Yep. And it had scales, and it was tall. It was about 7 feet tall or so, and it, you know, scared the life out of him. He goes back in the car. He's driving away. The creature actually runs up to the car. It jumps on top of the car, and he's driving, trying to shake it off, and eventually he does. But after that, you know, he goes home. He tells his friends. He tells his family, and word kind of got out. And when word got out, the newspapers caught wind of it. He was actually interviewed on camera about this. He was in all the local papers. And, you know, if you watch it, if you hear his story, I mean, you know, who knows, right? But he really comes across as legitimate, you know. From there, it spread like wildfire. People started to come out and say, you know, I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't want to be deemed as crazy, but I had my own sighting of some
my
sort
goodness.
of reptile creature. So people were being interviewed for it. Now you could say, oh well, these people, they just heard a story, so they just wanted publicity as well. Look, I've found in interviewing so many people in the paranormal, there's a lot, there's not a lot of hoaxing that takes place in the paranormal, not as much as people think. Now there is a lot of misidentification. There's a lot of that. But there's very little hoaxing that does take place, unfortunately, but not to the extent that an outsider of the field would think. So, there's a good chance that some of these sightings were probably legitimate. The local sheriff in Bishopville, South Carolina, decided to open an investigation into this. He didn't come away with any hard conclusions, but I think it was nice that he did an investigation instead of just saying all these people were crazy.
Right.
And now that area has become a tourist attraction, of course.
Oh my gosh.
But a reptile creature, I think that's awesome.
I mean that is cool. I think of the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
The kind of amphibian looking guy. I mean that would be seriously terrifying, and that's just it too. I would imagine. Sure, there's embellishments with anything, but I mean, how much publicity are you really getting from, reporting something, and I would think too, if I was doing my own thing to try to validate people's, I would see how genuine their recount is. I've seen some people recount ghost stories and they'll get, their hairs will stand up because they truly believe this is what I saw.
Right.
And so I definitely believe with you wholeheartedly that there's probably not as much hoaxing as what is commonly portrayed by people that just kind of discount everything or shrug it off.
Yeah.
So.
I got to ask you, because I love to get people's stories. Have you ever had a paranormal happening to you?
I don't know. The thing is, I haven't put myself out there to look.
Sure.
It's always kind of attracted me, and truth is I wouldn't even know the first way to go about trying to intentionally set up that, but from joining the Facebook group that you guys have, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, this tour is happening, I'm doing this tour, or does anyone want to join in on this investigation? And there's really a whole community where, if I wanted to kind of dip my toes in, I could put myself in, investigations and that sort of thing. So I think that would be something I'd love to try. But I want to believe so badly.
Sure, yeah. So do I.
and I do genuinely think that our world is so vast and so big that it could just be. There could be so many things going on, and there's nothing that I've definitely had strange occurrences and weird things line up where I don't know if it's something otherworldly or if it's a matter of fate. Every stuff like that kind of has an air of paranormal kind of vibe to it, but I just don't know. But I'm wholeheartedly a believer in anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, keep an open mind. Just
absolutely
don't leave your mind too open either.
Right, that's just it. There's a lot, I'm sure. But even tying into what I do with reptiles, you may know this better, but I heard in the 50s or maybe even 60s there was a huge investigation. I don't know if it was in the Alps for the Yeti. Bunch of investigators went. One of the people was an individual named Marlon Perkins, who was a real zoology person. He was the director of the Lincoln Park Zoo. He went on to have his own show called Mutual of Omaha, and they went to the Alps. They analyzed the scalp of a Yeti that I guess monks had in a temple, and there's a lot that ties in from and there's even cryptids that I think are regarded in zoology as real, even though there's no physical proof necessarily, but there's so many reports by legitimate people that when do we cross the line from zoology and cryptozoology?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to know,
right?
Because you don't know often if you're dealing with the physical or the metaphysical,
Okay.
For example, with the story that you just told me in the Himalayas,
Okay.
There is allegedly an ancient, forgotten civilization that's inhabiting within the Himalayas.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
And the civilization are composed of mystics, and it's a combination of humans and other beings. Some say reptilians, actually. Others say that there's giants living in there, and we're not even talking about Bigfoot giants, but like the Nephilim. Are you familiar with the Nephilim?
No.
The Nephilim are, so in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, the angels came down because they lusted after females. So they had children with these human females, and they created, the offspring was called the Nephilim. So they were a hybrid of angels and humans, and they were said to be very tall.
Okay.
And so they were, the giants of folklore, of legend.
I gotcha.
So these giants are said to inhabit the Himalayas. So when you were telling your story, I was even thinking like, well, was it a Yeti or was it one of this Nephilim?
Right, that is very true.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the rabbit holes are crazy, and, and all that is out there.
You could end up in an insane asylum looking at the stuff.
Right. What do you think about like sea serpents in Lake Michigan? Do you think there's any truth to that?
So the first documented sighting of a sea serpent in Lake Michigan was in 1867. It was by a fisherman named Joseph Mulkey. Okay. He was on a schooner ship, and he said that he saw a head pop up. And basically the creature that he described, the head was like a horse, and it had like a grayish underbelly with like a greenish top. Mm-hmm. And he said that it was about 50 to 60 feet long.
Wow, that's humongous.
Now, the next day, 2 ships off the coast of Lake Michigan saw the same thing. They described it the same way. So the newspaper at the time, they even reported that all the men swear that they were sober. And that they swear on my Bible mm-hmm. that they saw what they said they saw. So, and ever since then, down the decades, every so often people will see the Lake Michigan sea serpent. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not as popular as other paranormal phenomena in Chicago.
Right.
But, people will, report it every so often. And, it's funny because I just said other paranormal phenomena, but if it's a sea serpent, it might not even be paranormal. It just might be... it might be very zoological, mm-hmm. but just an unknown, forgotten, or not categorized animal, which is what cryptids are, right? Cryptozoology is a study of unknown animals that have not been scientifically documented.
Right. Do you see that in your community? It's split with people who don't believe in ghosts, but they believe in cryptozoology, or people that don't believe in the cryptozoology, but they believe in ghosts, or are they kind of one of the same, where they have an open-mindedness about, everything?
There is no unity in the paranormal. No? No. Ghost people like to fight with other ghost people, because the thing is, there's different beliefs within each field.
Right.
For example, with UFOs, ufology, the study of UFOs, there's the nuts and bolts theory, which is that UFOs are metallic objects that come from space. Mm-hmm. They're advanced technology, and then the
That's
occupants.
Like the very classic kind of belief,
very
right?
classic. And the other belief is more the Jacques Vallée, who is Dr. Jacques Vallée was a scientist, and he believed that these UFOs were interdimensional. And so these two different UFO ideas, they're always like, combating with each other.
Clashing.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there's a Carl Jung idea where UFOs are real, but they are a combination of these external forces and these internal human forces that combine, the psychic blast, if you will, that's combines with these external psychic forces, and it creates these mandalas, or what he says are actually UFOs. They're mandalas.
Mhm.
They're
Okay.
symbols.
Right.
I'm explaining that oversimplistically, but
Sure.
if you read the work of Carl Jung, I had to read his essay on UFOs twice. It's called an essay, but it's actually book length.
Mhm.
It's very complex because he's a genius. It's very complex. So I'm still trying to fully understand what he believed about UFOs.
Wow.
But my point is, there's so many different beliefs
Yes.
about UFOs, about cryptids. Like I said earlier, there's the idea that Bigfoot is, an animal that hasn't been discovered yet, and there's other people that believe that, Bigfoot is interdimensional.
Right.
He's highly intelligent, and even within those, there's offshoots with different
I'm
schools of
sure.
thought.
Yeah.
There's the people that believe that yes, UFO, that Bigfoot is an unknown animal, and we need to hunt it, so to produce a body for science. And then there's other people that believe like, no, you cannot hunt Bigfoot. You need to leave him alone. You could study, but leave him alone. So
Wow.
yeah.
That is crazy. With UFO sightings, do you see that like Illinois is a hotbed of it, like for it, or?
Yeah, definitely. The Midwest in general is a hotbed for paranormal activity. And one of the more famous UFO cases was in Orland Park, right outside Chicago, the Chicago suburbs. This was in 2006, and the Illinois State Director of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network.
Okay.
MUFON is the world's largest UFO organization. The Illinois State Director, his name is Sam Moranto. He's a friend of mine. And he was the head investigator of those Orland Park sightings. There was over 100 sightings during this, one night.
What?
It was a large UFO. People saw the lights around it, and the show UFO Hunters even did an episode on the Orland Park.
And what
the
is
Tinley-
some of the conceived reasons of it, or why, is there beliefs, what are the skeptics saying and what are the believers saying?
It's funny for this specific UFO case. The skeptics aren't saying much, probably because there's so many reports of people saying the same thing.
100 plus.
Yeah.
And is it of you said light, so it's like a UFO, like a
A
craft
large,
in the air.
a large UFO, yeah. And by the way, I said Orland Park. I need to correct myself. It was actually Tinley Park.
Okay.
It was known as the Tinley Park Lights.
Wow.
But also in defense of myself, people in Orland Park did see this because Orland Park and Tinley Park are next to each
Sure.
other. So, but anyway, that was one of the more famous cases in the Chicagoland area, and actually, just a couple of days ago, I interviewed somebody that had a sighting on June 2nd of this year. So
very recently.
Very recently, this guy. He videotaped, well, not videotape. You could tell I'm from the 90s. I'm saying videotape. He recorded it on his phone, and it was a triangle UFO.
Okay.
And it's actually good footage. I could show you later on.
Okay.
It's good footage. He was driving home. It was at night. He sees these three lights, and he kind of pulls over. He gets out of his car and he records. Yeah, and it's three stationary lights, and I mean it looks like a giant triangle UFO.
Wow.
So
Common
it's-
depictions that I see are like triangular crafts, and I don't really see what's that movie with is it Will Smith, Independence Day? There's not really any spherical. I see a lot of triangular reporting of UFOs as opposed to the very classic 50s sci-fi movie round cylinder.
You know what? UFOs are they come in all shapes and sizes. Right. They come in spherical. They come in cylindrical, triangle. Now, this could be because there's different alien species.
Okay.
A lot of people see mantis of
I've heard of that.
mantis beings.
I've heard of that. So I've heard that there's classifications of a lot of physical aliens that people see. There's like the grays that are like very short. There's like the mantis that are like, I think they're taller, but they do have like kind of praying mantis like looking heads, right? What else is there that people see?
There's what's called the Nordic beings.
Okay.
The Nordics are they are a race of alien beings that are tall. They're Caucasian. They look just like humans. They're Caucasian. They have blonde hair, blue eyes.
Okay.
So yeah, the Nordic beings, and then there is also the reptilians.
Okay, I've heard of that too. I
The
think.
reptilians, yeah. There's the reptilian beings, the mantis beings, and it's said that the mantis beings control the greys, the alien gray beings. Yeah. The greys are about anywhere from 3 to 5 feet tall, large black almond-shaped eyes. And it's said that the praying mantis being telepathically controls them.
Wow.
Because oftentimes an alien abductee, will say that in the craft that they're taken in, the mantis being will be like in the distance, like almost orchestrating things. Everything. Yeah, exactly.
That is so freaky. I mean, I just remember like, I don't know if it's like episodes of Monster Quest or what, but just hearing people's like stories of like, they think they see a craft and then they like kind of wake up and like hours have lapsed and they have kind of very distant memories of being probed and that kind of thing. And honestly, what genuinely like terrifies me is the thought of aliens, you know what I mean? Especially something about like how the grays are depicted and with the big black eyes. Like, I mean, it is so terrifying, and I think it's a common thing to be scared of them because the scope of how small Earth is to how vast space is, right?
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting because the grays, some researchers think that if the mantises are associated with, the praying mantis insect, then it seems like the grays, you could associate them with ants because they have similar eyes.
That is very true.
And they also work like in a colony like ants do. And ants are, controlled by the queen. So it's like the mantis is controlling the ants.
Wow.
So, and alien abductees have actually described alien beings as insectoid.
Right.
So,
Man, and then it just like makes you wonder, like, is that something that, like, are insects like ants like something that just repeats all throughout the universe and takes manifestations into what else? In our rendition of it are those little ants and worker ants and queen ants. I mean,
I'm going to be honest with you. I'd never actually thought about that
right
before.
What if
that's awesome.
Who knows, right? Is it just repeating like with everything? I don't know.
You know what? You just gave me a thought. Yeah, like
maybe I'm supposed to be slated to be a speaker next year.
I would love that.
At the convention, right? I gotta develop that theory a little more.
So maybe according to your theory, then humans would be represented as something else in another planet. Like we could be the insects.
Who knows? I mean, unless insects are just like, unless ants and stuff are just like the key that just ties in everything.
Oh, that would be, man.
I don't know.
Oh, man.
That's crazy. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, the insects are our gods.
Who knows, right? I mean, they always say that, like, there's, like, 1 billion insects to 1 people. You know what I mean? Like, we're just so outnumbered because they're so microscopic and tiny.
Yeah.
So, no kidding. I don't mean to go back in our conversation, but you mentioned something that kind of intrigued me. You said, when we were talking about Bachelor's Grove, you said people are reports of, I've always heard of white lights, right? But I've never heard of, you said like green lights and red lights. Are there like conceived like meanings of what different orbs mean?
You know what? Nobody knows, but multicolored orbs is pretty common in haunted locations. Whether it's cemeteries or homes or just pretty much anywhere that there's ghostly phenomena, you'll get reports about people encountering orbs of lights, and usually they're blue or yellow or red. So green is a rare one. Again, we don't know why. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But the other color, blue, seems to be the more famous color. I wish I knew. Some believe that it's not ghostly activity. It's fairy activity.
Okay.
So these could be like fairy beings that when they travel between realms, they have to travel like in this capsule, in this ball of lights.
Okay.
And that's how they travel. Maybe these orbs are like portals for them to enter between dimensions. Interestingly, though, Bigfoot has been sighted around orbs as well.
Really?
Yeah. So people have seen Bigfoot.
So that could be a very kind of broad thing that occurs with a lot of odd phenomenon, right?
So it could be exactly. It could be that the orbs are connected to various paranormal phenomena, or it could be it's all one phenomena and the orbs is the cause of these different things.
Wow. Okay.
Because now you have ghostly activity, you have fairy encounters, you have Bigfoot encounters. Look at even UFOs. UFOs are just one large orb.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, right, when people record them, it's like the lights, right, that connect it. So
yeah, and UFOs have been seen to change color right in front of people.
Oh wow.
So
what do you think about? We were talking about like the different outlooks on aliens, whether they're like interdimensional or if they are like advanced civilization. What do you think about kind of like the ancient aliens angle, where aliens aided mankind into developing, right, with the pyramids and other crazy feats, what is it, Easter Island and things like that? What are your thoughts on? Because I love I could binge watch. I think a lot of people could kind of get stuck in like a Netflix loop of where it just replays the next episode of Ancient Aliens, because some of it is kind of really out there, but I'm so inquisitive that it just kind of just sparks my interest so much.
I just met David Childress.
Is that the dude with the crazy hair? Or?
No, he's no, but he's. I wish I met him. No, David Childress, though, he's like in every episode of Ancient Aliens.
Wow.
He's one of the producers as well.
Oh wow.
And a lot of people don't know, but he has his own bookstore in Kempton, Illinois, which is about an hour from here.
What?
It's all by farmland. It's our farmland.
And it's like just a regular, like a Barnes and Nobles, or is it like paranormal
No,
UFO?
it's just paranormal. A lot of his books and a lot of books that he under his publishing company.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And is he living in Illinois?
He has a couple different places.
Wow.
Yeah. He has property in Illinois and he has property in a couple other places. But
well, I'm sure the History Channel probably. Is it the History Channel that Ancient Aliens on?
Yeah.
They probably pay really well, I would imagine.
I'm
right?
sure they do.
That show. I'm 24 years old. I remember watching that show 10 years or more, 10 years or longer.
Yeah.
So it's been on for a while.
It's been on for a long time. It was a special event because he's often not there.
Okay.
So that's why, he told my friend Sam Maranto, the Illinois State Director of Mutual UFO Network, that he was going to be there. And so, it was like kind of a invite-only events.
Oh, that's
so
really cool.
Yeah, so we went there. We shook hands, got a picture with him, talked with him a little bit, and then I spent a lot of money on books. But yeah, I'm really fascinated by the idea of Eric Von Daniken, Chariots of the Gods. The idea that our gods are actually alien beings that
they
guided
reference
humanity.
that a lot in Ancient Aliens, right? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And they get their ideas. Ancient Aliens, the show, gets their ideas from ancient sources.
Yes.
Religious sources.
Yeah, religious sources. Paintings in caves that could depict gods and feats of construction, really, with ancient people.
Yeah, I think, I obviously I don't know. I don't have any of the answers. I like to think that there's some legitimacy to aliens guiding humanity, you know. But I think also we need to keep in mind that humans are so intelligent ourselves, and when we have limited resources, we'll find ways to create things.
Okay.
There is another interesting idea that the pyramids of Giza were built using sound
Really?
vibrations.
And how
And
is
well,
that?
so this has been there's even a research paper that actually goes into how sound could move heavy objects, and I'm not smart enough to go into the details, but it's something that I read about, but I never really did a deep dive in.
Yeah.
So like I'm really not a
We
good
think about
person
like
to ask
bass
about.
and stuff, how it could shake a car and that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
exactly. But I definitely like the idea of, you know, just people from the sky guiding humanity,
Right.
you know. But yeah, you look at other structures and it's like, well, how did we do it, you know? Even with all our vast intellect.
Right.
Like it's like
Well, they say the pyramids were worked on for, I mean, what is it, hundreds or even thousands of years? I mean, very, very long time. Like that's the at least scientific explanation of it. But like the scope of that is so crazy. You know, it's almost hard to believe in. It's almost easier to believe that it is something, you know, that is outside the capabilities of a mortal person.
it's definitely easier to
Right.
think that, you know. And then you figure there are pharaohs that had elongated skulls.
I seen those. I seen that too
So it's like, okay,
on some episodes.
do they have extraterrestrial blood, or are they extraterrestrial themselves?
Right.
And so, you know, now the conventional thinking is that, oh, when a baby, you know, is an infant, you could actually mold their head to
Right.
be elongated. And that's true. You can do that, and we know that because there's societies today that do that.
Right.
But, you know, if you look at these skulls,
I mean, they're freaky.
it's incredible, you know. So, you know, maybe some of the ancient kings, the ancient pharaohs, you know, had extraterrestrial DNA, were guiding humanity in that way.
Right.
You know, they were avatars for the aliens. So, you know, but then it's also said that, you know, pharaohs and other kings, they were in contact with the gods. So maybe that's how they were doing it. Maybe the pharaohs were just a medium between humanity and the aliens, because they had that extraterrestrial blood in them. They
Wow.
were hybrid beings.
That is so fascinating. So, Jack, you said that when you went to that bookstore, you spent a lot of money on books. Is that the way that people in this community kind of exchange information? Is it through that? Also digital mediums, like how you have the big community with your Facebook group?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you could connect with people now. Social media obviously is a big one, right? There's Facebook groups on social media that you could join and you could interact with people. The best way is probably conventions.
Okay.
And that's why I wanted to do my own convention, because I want people to network with each other. As I kind of implied earlier, there's a lot of drama in the paranormal field, and I don't like that drama. I want us to like kind of get along, to network with each other. And that's why I wanted to do the paranormal convention. I also really like small businesses, and I wanted to help small businesses out, you know, because the vendor fee is not a lot compared to a lot of these other conventions and stuff. So that is the best way to kind of interact with people, you know, whether going to conventions, interacting on social media, participating in Facebook groups, or, you know, on Instagram groups and stuff like that, or writing a book, meeting people that way, you know. So
Right. So you mentioned the conventions. I would imagine that's probably the best way, because you see firsthand and you almost get that, you get the human connection, you know, meeting another person. How many years have you guys done the Paranormal Chicago Convention?
it's been since not that long, 2022.
Oh, okay.
So I actually did 3 in 2022.
Okay.
One in the spring, one in the summer, one in the fall, and it was just, I mean, it was a lot. It was
I would
it was
imagine.
actually too much.
Okay.
Doing 3 conventions in 1 year. So after that, I said to myself, I'm only going to do 1 a year.
1 a year.
So I did 3 in 2022, and then in 2023 I did 1, and then this year 2024 I did 1 as well, and that's how I'm going to keep it, just 1 a year.
Are the dates already in line for next year? Is it way too early? Because you guys just did the convention.
Yeah, it's too early right now.
So I'm sure though people could join you guys. The what's the exact title of the Facebook group?
Yeah, it's a Paranormal Chicago, and it's my Facebook group in Chicago, and that's also how you could find me. And I post all the time, and a lot of other people post there too, which I'm so glad about, because for a long time, I was the only one posting. So I had to try to encourage others to post in there. So now they're posting, and it's a community. That's what I'm trying to build is a community, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and that's all I got. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you've had a lot of success because it is one of the most active Facebook groups that I'm in, and a lot of people talk. I mean, you put really thought-provoking stuff into that group, and
yeah, I try.
There's a lot of people that there's discussion around it, and a lot of people are putting out their own stuff, and I'm really excited to see what 2025 holds when you guys put on the next year's convention. I mean, the scope of it that you've described to me this year was so big. I can't even imagine what you have in store for next year. So I just want to thank you for coming in, and I'm glad I was able to pick your brain for a little bit. So we'll be sure to put up your Facebook on the screen so that everybody could join. And again, I just want to really thank you for coming in today and talking to me about the paranormal.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this, and this was a lot of fun. And I hope I could come back next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.